I watched my daughter-in-law hurl a leather suitcase into the lake and drive away without a single glance back. I scrambled to the shore, battling the pull of the muddy bank, and wrestled the soaked suitcase out of the water. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. That's when I heard it. A muffled, weak sound coming from inside. "Please, God, don't let it be what I think it is," I whispered, my trembling fingers fumbling with the wet zipper. It was stuck, but finally gave way. In that instant, my heart simply stopped. What I saw inside chilled me to the bone in a way I hadn't felt in all my 63 years of life. My name is Eleanor, but everyone calls me Ellie Whitlock. I'm 63 years old, and I've been living alone since I buried my only child, Marcus, 8 months ago. Our house, nestled by the shore of Lake Juniper in rural Georgia, used to be filled with laughter and memories. Now, it felt too large, too quiet. That September afternoon, I was sipping my sweet tea on the back porch when something caught my attention. The silver sedan belonging to Sloan, my daughter-in-law, barreled down the dirt road, kicking up a thick cloud of dust. She was driving like a maniac at an insane speed for that winding road. Something was terribly wrong. I set my mug on the porch railing and squinted to get a better look. Sloan slammed on the brakes right at the lake's edge, the engine still running. She sprang out of the car as if the devil himself was chasing her. Her face was flushed, her hair a mess. She yanked the trunk open so violently, I thought she'd rip the door right off its hinges. That's when I saw the suitcase. That brown leather suitcase I'd given her myself the day she married Marcus. "To carry your dreams wherever you go," I told her then. How foolish I'd been. Sloan dragged the bag out. It was heavy. I could tell by the way her body strained, the way her arms trembled. She glanced around, nervous, guilty. I'll never forget that look. "Sloan!" I yelled from the porch, but she didn't hear me, or pretended not to. She walked to the water's edge. Every step seemed like a struggle, as if she were carrying not just a weight, but a terrible burden. She swung the suitcase once, twice, and on the third heave, she launched it into the water. The splash shattered the afternoon silence. The bag floated for a moment before beginning its slow, dreadful descent. Sloan bolted back to the car. The engine roared, the tires squealed on the gravel, and she vanished down the dirt road, leaving nothing behind but swirling dust and a thick silence. I stood paralyzed for a few seconds. What did I just witness? Sloan, the suitcase, the lake, the pure desperation in her movements? A shiver ran down my spine despite the afternoon heat. My legs started moving before my mind could fully process what was happening. I ran down the porch steps, across the yard, and onto the muddy bank. The lake was only about 300 feet away. I ran like I hadn't run in years. My knees protested, my chest burned, but I didn't stop. When I reached the shore, I was gasping for breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. The suitcase was still there, floating, slowly sinking. The leather was sodden, dark, and heavy. I waded into the water without hesitation. The lake was cold, much colder than I expected. It reached my knees, then my waist. The bottom mud sucked at my feet. I reached out, grabbed one of the handles, and pulled. It was incredibly heavy. I yanked harder, my arms shaking from the effort. Water splashed into my face, my clothes were completely soaked. Finally, I managed to drag the suitcase toward the bank. That's when I heard the sound, a weak, muffled cry coming from inside the bag. My blood ran cold. No, it couldn't be. "Please, God, don't let it be what I think," I pleaded. I pulled faster, driven by pure panic. I hauled the suitcase onto the wet sand and fell to my knees beside it. My hands sought the zipper. It was jammed, wet, and slightly rusted. My fingers kept slipping. Come on," I muttered through gritted teeth. Tears started to blur my vision. I forced the zipper once, twice. It finally gave way. I lifted the lid, and the whole world stopped. My heart stopped beating. The air was trapped in my throat. My hands flew to my mouth to stifle a scream. There, wrapped in a soaked powder blue blanket, was a baby, a newborn, so tiny, so fragile, so still. His lips were blue, his skin pale as wax, his eyes closed. He wasn't moving. Oh my God, oh my God. No, my hands shook so violently I could barely hold him. I lifted him out of the suitcase with a tenderness I didn't know I still possessed. He was cold, so cold. He weighed less than a bag of sand. His tiny head fit in the palm of my hand. His umbilical cord was still tied off with a piece of ordinary twine. Twine, not a medical clamp. As if someone had done this at home, in secret, without any help. No, 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 I whispered over and over. I pressed my ear to his chest. Silence. Nothing. I pressed my cheek against his nose, and then I felt the faintest puff of air. So weak I thought I'd imagined it, but it was there. He was barely breathing, but he was breathing. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the baby to my chest. My legs nearly buckled. I ran toward the house faster than I'd ever run in my life. Water streamed from my clothes, my bare feet were cut and bleeding on the rough path, but I felt no pain. Only terror, only urgency, only the desperate need to save the tiny life trembling against me. I burst into the house screaming. I don't know what I was yelling. Maybe help, maybe Jesus, maybe nothing coherent. I grabbed the kitchen phone with one hand, holding the baby with the other. I dialed 911. My fingers slipped on the keys. The phone nearly dropped twice. 911, what is your emergency? A calm female voice asked. A baby. I found a baby in the lake. He's not responding. He's cold. He's blue. Please, please send help. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Tell me your address. I stammered out my address near Lake Juniper. The operator instructed me to place the baby on a flat surface. I swept everything off the kitchen table with one arm. Dishes, papers, everything crashed to the floor. Nothing mattered. I placed the baby on the table. So small, so fragile, so still. Is he breathing? I shrieked at the operator, my voice a high, unrecognizable sound. You tell me. Look at his chest. Is it moving? I looked closely, searching for a nearly imperceptible movement, so subtle I had to lean in to see it. Yes, I think so. Very shallow. Okay, listen closely. I'm going to guide you. I need you to get a clean towel and dry the baby very gently. Then wrap him up to keep him warm. The ambulance is already on the way. I did as I was told. I grabbed towels from the bathroom. I dried his tiny body with clumsy, desperate motions. Every second felt like an eternity. I wrapped the baby tightly in clean towels. I picked him up again, cradling him against my chest. I began to rock him without even realizing it, an ancient instinct I thought I'd forgotten. Hold on, little one, I whispered. Please, hold on. They're coming. They're coming to help you. The minutes that followed until the ambulance arrived were the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor with the baby pressed to my chest. I sang. I don't know what I sang. Maybe the same song I used to sing to Marcus when he was small. Maybe just senseless sound. I just needed him to know he wasn't alone, that someone was holding him, that someone wanted him to live. The sirens tore through the silence. Red and white lights flashed through the windows. I ran to the door. 2 paramedics jumped out of the ambulance, an older man with a gray beard and a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She took the baby from my arms with an efficiency that broke my heart. She examined him quickly, pulled out a stethoscope, and listened. Her face was emotionless, but I saw her shoulders tense. Severe hypothermia, possible aspiration, she told her partner. We need to move now. They placed him on a small gurney, put an oxygen mask on him. Their hands worked fast, connecting wires, monitors, things I didn't understand. The man looked at me. Are you coming with us? It wasn't a question. I climbed into the ambulance, sinking into the small side seat. I couldn't stop looking at the baby, so tiny amidst all that equipment. The ambulance took off, sirens wailing. The world blurred past the windows. "How did you find him?" the paramedic asked as she continued working. "In a suitcase, in the lake. I saw someone throw it in." She looked at me, then at her partner. I saw something in her eyes. Concern, perhaps suspicion, perhaps pity. "Did you see who it was?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Sloane. My daughter-in-law, Marcus's widow, the woman who cried at his funeral as if her world had ended. The same woman who had just tried to drown a baby? How could I say that? How could I even believe it myself? "Yes," I finally said. "I saw who it was." We arrived at the Atlanta Medical Center in less than 15 minutes. The emergency room doors flew open. A dozen people in white and green scrubs swarmed the gurney. They shouted numbers, medical terms, orders. They rushed the baby through a set of double doors. I tried to follow, but a nurse stopped me. "Ma'am, you need to stay here. The doctors are working. We need some information." She led me to a waiting room, cream-colored walls, plastic chairs, the smell of disinfectant. I sat down, shaking from head to toe. I didn't know if it was from the cold of my wet clothes or the shock, probably both. The nurse sat across from me. She was older than the paramedic, maybe my age. Her name tag read Nurse Diane. She had kind wrinkles around her eyes. "I'm going to need you to tell me everything that happened," she said softly. I recounted every detail, from the moment I saw Sloane's car until I opened the suitcase. Diane took notes on a tablet, nodding, not interrupting. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "The police will want to speak with you," she said. "This is attempted homicide, maybe worse." Attempted homicide. The words hung in the air like black birds. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, a murderer? I couldn't process it. I couldn't understand. Diane placed her hand over mine. "You did the right thing. You saved a life today." But that wasn't how I felt. It felt like I'd uncovered something terrible, something I couldn't shove back into the darkness, something that would change everything forever. 2 hours passed before a doctor came to speak to me. He was young, maybe 35. He had deep circles under his eyes and hands that smelled of antibacterial soap. "The baby is stable," he said. "He's in the neonatal ICU for now. He suffered severe hypothermia and aspirated water. His lungs are compromised. The next 48 hours are critical." "Is he going to live?" I asked, my voice broken. "I don't know," he said, with brutal honesty. "We're going to do everything we can." The police arrived half an hour later. 2 officers, a woman in her 40s with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, and a younger man taking notes. The woman introduced herself as Detective Sergeant Ava Johnson of the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. She had dark eyes that seemed to look right through lies. They asked me the same questions over and over, from different angles. I described the car, the exact time, Sloane's movements, the suitcase, everything. Ava watched me with an intensity that made me feel guilty, even though I'd done nothing wrong. "And are you sure it was your daughter-in-law?" "Completely sure. Completely." "Why would she do something like that?" "I don't know." "Where is she now?" "I don't know." "When was the last time you spoke with her before today?" 3 weeks ago, on the anniversary of my son's death." Ava wrote something down. She exchanged a look with her partner. "We're going to need you to come to the precinct tomorrow to make a formal statement, and you cannot contact Sloane under any circumstances. Do you understand?" I nodded. What was I going to say to her anyway? Why did you try to kill a baby? Why did you throw him in the lake like trash? Why? Why? The officers left. Diane returned with a blanket and a hot cup of tea. "You should go home, get some rest, change your clothes." But I couldn't leave. I couldn't leave that baby alone in the hospital. That baby I had held against my chest, who had drawn his last breath of hope in my arms. I stayed in the waiting room. Diane brought me dry clothes from the hospital storage, nurse scrubs, and a baggy t-shirt. I changed in the bathroom, looking in the mirror. I looked like I'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that plastic chair watching the clock. Every hour, I got up and asked about the baby. The nurses gave me the same answer. Stable, critical, fighting. At 3 in the morning, Reverend Thomas, the priest from my church, showed up. Someone must have called him. He sat next to me in silence. He didn't say anything for a long time. He was just there. Sometimes that's all you need, a presence, proof that you're not completely alone in hell. God tests us in many ways, he finally said. This doesn't feel like a test, I replied. It feels like a curse. He nodded. He didn't try to convince me otherwise, and I appreciated that more than any sermon. As the sun began to rise, I knew nothing would ever be the same. I had crossed a line. I had seen something I couldn't unsee. Whatever came next, I would have to face it, because that baby, that tiny being fighting for every breath in the next room, had become my responsibility. I hadn't chosen this, but I couldn't abandon him either. Not after pulling him from the water, not after feeling his heartbeat against mine. The dawn arrived without me even noticing. Light streamed through the waiting room windows, painting everything in a pale orange glow. I had spent the entire night in that plastic chair. My back ached, my eyes burned, but I couldn't leave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the suitcase sinking. I saw that still little body. I saw the blue lips. Diane showed up at 7 in the morning with coffee and a foil-wrapped breakfast sandwich. "You need to eat something," she said, placing them in my hands. I wasn't hungry, but I ate anyway, because she stood there waiting. The coffee was too hot and burned my tongue. The sandwich tasted like cardboard, but I swallowed. I chewed. I pretended to be a normal person doing normal things on a normal morning. "The baby is still stable," Diane said, sitting beside me. "His body temperature is rising. His lungs are responding to treatment. That's a good sign." "Can I see him?" She shook her head. "Not yet. Immediate family only, and we don't even know who the family is." Family. The word hit me like a stone. That baby had a family, a mother, Sloan, but she had tried to kill him. So who was the father? Where was he? Why hadn't anyone reported him missing? The questions piled up in my head with no answers. At 9 o'clock, Ava returned. She was alone this time. She sat across from me with a folder in her hands. Her expression was hard, inquisitive. She looked at me as if I were the suspect. "Ellie, I need to ask you a few more questions," she said, opening the folder. "I already told you everything I know." "I know, but some inconsistencies have surfaced." Inconsistencies. The word floated between us like an accusation. I felt my stomach clench. What kind of inconsistencies? Ava took out a photograph and placed it on the small table between us. It was Sloane's car, but it was in a parking lot, not by the lake. "This photo was taken by a security camera at a supermarket 30 minutes from here yesterday at 5:20 in the afternoon." 5:20 in the afternoon, 10 minutes after I had supposedly seen her at the lake? Impossible. I looked at the photo more closely. It was her car, license plate and all. "But it can't be. There has to be a mistake," I said. "I saw her. I was there. I saw her throw the suitcase." "You were sure?" she said, but my voice sounded less convincing now. Ava leaned forward. "Ellie, I need you to be honest with me. What is your relationship with Sloane? Do you get along?" And there it was, the real question, the one I'd been waiting for since the police showed up. Because we didn't get along. We never had. From the day Marcus introduced her, I knew something was wrong with her. She was too perfect, too calculating, too interested in the money Marcus earned as an engineer. "We're not close," I admitted. "Do you blame her for your son's death?" "What?" My voice was too loud, too defensive. "It's a simple question. Do you blame Sloane for Marcus's death?" "The accident. That's what everyone called it. Marcus was driving home after dinner with Sloane. It was raining, the car skidded, it hit a tree. Marcus died instantly. Sloane walked away with minor scratches. It always seemed strange to me. It always seemed convenient. But I never had proof. Just a heartbroken mother looking for someone to blame." "I don't see what that has to do with the baby." "It has everything to do with it," Ava said, closing the folder. "Because we haven't been able to locate Sloane. She's vanished. Her house is empty, her phone is off, and you are the only person who claims to have seen her yesterday." Her words fell on me like ice water. She was accusing me, not directly, but the insinuation was there, clear as day. She thought I had made it all up, that I had found the baby some other way and was blaming Sloan out of vengeance. "I didn't lie," I said, clenching my jaw. "I saw what I saw." "Then we need to find Sloan, and fast, because if she is this baby's mother, he's in grave danger. And if she's not, then we have an even bigger mystery on our hands." Ava stood up, handing me a card with her number. "If you remember anything else, any detail, call me." She walked out, leaving me with more questions than answers. I sat there, the card in my hand, wondering if I was losing my mind. I had seen Sloan. I was sure of it. But now, doubt was seeping in like poison. What if I was wrong? What if it was someone else? What if my grief and resentment made me see what I wanted to see? Reverend Thomas came back at noon. He held a rosary in his hands. "Shall we pray?" he asked. I'm not very religious, I never was. But in that moment, I needed something bigger than myself. Something to tell me I wasn't alone in this. I nodded. We prayed together quietly. The familiar words calmed me, even if I didn't understand how it worked. When we finished, I felt a little less broken. "The police think I'm lying," I confided. "The truth always comes out," he replied, "even if it takes time." But we didn't have time. That baby was fighting for his life, and somewhere Sloan was hiding or running or planning her next move. At 3 in the afternoon, a different doctor came to see me, an older woman this time, with thick glasses and a serious expression. "We need your authorization to run some tests on the baby," she said. "I'm not family." "We know, but you are the only responsible party. Child Protective Services is on the way, but in the meantime, we need to act. The baby needs blood work. We need to know if he has any medical conditions, if he was exposed to drugs, if he has injuries we haven't detected." I signed the papers. I didn't even read them completely. I just wanted them to do whatever was necessary to save him. 2 hours later, the social worker showed up. Marcy was young, too young for that job, I thought. Maybe 25. Short hair, a gray suit, a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Whitlock," she said, sitting beside me, "I need to ask you some questions about your situation. I understand you found the baby." The story again, the questions again. But Marcy was different. She didn't look at me with suspicion. She looked at me with pity, which was somehow worse. "Do you live alone?" she asked. "Yes." "Do you have a stable income?" "I have my late husband's pension and some savings." "Criminal record?" "No." "Mental health issues? Depression? Anxiety?" I hesitated. "After Marcus died, I took antidepressants for 3 months. My doctor said it was normal, that grief sometimes needs chemical help. I stopped when I started feeling better." "I had depression after my son's death," I admitted, "but it's past." Marcy wrote something down. I couldn't see what. "The baby is going to need a temporary home when he's released from the hospital," she said. "If he is released, CPS will look for certified foster families. In the meantime, he will remain in state custody." State custody? Those words broke something inside me. That baby I had held against my chest, who had breathed his first breath of life in my arms, would be handed over to strangers, to a system, to people who would see him as just another file, just another number. What if I wanted to? The words came out before I could stop them. What if I wanted to care for him? Marcy looked at me, surprised, then skeptical. "Ms. Whitlock, you are 63 years old. You are not a certified foster parent. You have no legal relationship with the baby, and you are involved in an active criminal investigation." "I didn't do anything wrong. I saved his life." "I know, but the system has protocols. The best interest of the child comes first, and frankly, your age and your recent emotional situation are factors we have to consider." I felt like I'd been slapped. Too old, too unstable, too broken. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was crazy to even think it, but when I closed my eyes, all I saw was that fragile little body, and I knew no one else in the world would love him like I could. That night, I went home for the first time in 36 hours. Diane convinced me. She said I needed to shower, sleep in a real bed, that the baby would be fine, and they would call if anything changed. I drove home as the sun was setting. The lake glittered on my right. I stopped in the exact spot where I had seen Sloan, where I had pulled out the suitcase. I got out of the car, walking to the bank. The suitcase was gone. The police had taken it as evidence, but I could see exactly where it had been. I could see my own footprints in the dried mud. I stood there as darkness fell, wondering if I would ever know the truth, wondering if Sloan was watching from somewhere, wondering what the hell had really happened. And then my phone rang. It was the hospital. My heart stopped. "Ms. Whitlock," Diane's voice said, "you need to come back now." I drove back to the hospital, ignoring every speed limit sign. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it over the engine. Diane hadn't given me any details over the phone, just said, "Come back now." Those 3 words were enough to fill my head with the worst possible scenarios. The baby had died. That had to be it. Why else would they call with such urgency? He had fought for 2 days, and finally his tiny body had given out. I hadn't been fast enough. I parked haphazardly, taking up 2 spots. I ran toward the emergency doors. Diane was waiting for me at the entrance. Her expression was serious, but there was something else, something I couldn't decipher. "He's alive," she said immediately, as if she knew exactly what I was thinking. "The baby is alive, but you have to come with me." She led me down hallways I didn't know. We took an elevator to the 3rd floor, past the NICU, and kept walking. Finally, we reached a small conference room. Inside were Detective Ava, Marcy, the social worker, and a man I didn't recognize. He was older, maybe 60. He wore a dark suit and glasses. He had the face of a lawyer. "Please sit down," Ava said, pointing to a chair. I sat. My legs felt like jello. Everyone looked at me with an intensity that made me want to run. "We received the results of the baby's DNA analysis," Ava said. Her words dropped like stones into quiet water. DNA? I didn't understand why they had done that. What were they looking for? "And?" I asked when the silence became unbearable. Ava exchanged a look with the man in the suit. He nodded, opened a folder, and pulled out several printed sheets. He placed them in front of me. "The baby is a boy. He was born approximately 3 days ago, according to medical exams." Ava paused. "And, Ellie, he is your grandson." The world stopped. The words made no sense. I heard them, but my brain refused to process them. My grandson. Impossible. Marcus died 8 months ago. He didn't leave any children, no pregnancy, nothing. "That's impossible," I whispered. "The results are conclusive," the man in the suit said. "I'm Dr. Ernest Soto, a specialist in forensic genetics. We ran the tests twice to be sure. The baby shares approximately 25% of his DNA with you. He is definitively your biological grandson, Marcus's son." Marcus's son. My Marcus. I felt like someone had hit me in the chest with a hammer. Marcus had a son he never knew, a son someone had tried to drown in a lake. But how? My voice sounded distant. Marcus died 8 months ago. Sloan never said anything about a pregnancy. "Exactly," Ava said, leaning forward. "Sloan was pregnant at the time of the accident. According to our calculations, she conceived about a month before Marcus's death, which means she knew." The room was spinning. Sloan knew she was pregnant when Marcus died. Why didn't she say anything? Why did she hide the pregnancy for 9 months? Why did she give birth in secret and then try to kill her own child? "I don't understand," I said. Tears were starting to blur my vision. Why would she do that? He's her son, Marcus's son. "That's what we have to find out," Ava said. "But there's more, Ellie. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I braced myself. I didn't know for what, but I knew what was coming would be worse. We've been investigating your son's accident, and there are inconsistencies. Major inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? Marcus's car was examined after the accident. The official report said it was a skid due to rain, but we requested a new review. They found evidence of manipulation in the brakes. Someone sabotaged them. The word dropped like a bomb. Sabotage. Murder. My son hadn't died in an accident. He had been murdered. Sloan, I said. It wasn't a question. She's our primary suspect, Ava admitted. But we need proof, and we need to find her. She's completely disappeared. She hasn't used her phone. She hasn't touched her bank accounts. It's like she vanished into thin air. I got up from the chair. I needed to move. I needed air. I walked to the window. Outside, the city glittered with millions of lights. Normal life, normal people, while I was trapped in this nightmare. My son, I whispered against the glass. My baby. She killed him. No one responded. There was nothing to say. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Marcy. There's one more thing you need to know, she said softly. About the baby. About his future. I turned around. Her eyes were kind, but sad. Given that the baby is your biological grandson, you have legal rights. You can apply for custody. She held up a hand before I could speak. It will be a long process. There will be evaluations, home visits, and psychological interviews. And in the meantime, the baby will remain in state care. No, the word came out as a roar. You're not going to take him from me. He's all I have left of Marcus. He's my grandson, my blood. I understand, Marcy said. Believe me, I do. But the system has protocols. And after everything that happened, we have to make sure the baby is safe. He'll be safer with me than with any stranger, perhaps. But that decision is not up to me. It's up to a judge and the child's well-being. Dr. Soto spoke for the first time since his initial revelation. There's another factor we must consider. The baby suffered severe trauma, hypothermia, near drowning. The next few weeks will be critical for his development. He will need specialized care, therapy, constant medical monitoring. I'll do whatever it takes, I said. Whatever. Ava stood up. Ellie, I need you to understand one thing. You are not a suspect. We believe your story. But you also can't simply keep the baby because he's your grandson. There is a legal process, and in the meantime, our priority is finding Sloan. We need your help. How? Think, Sloan. Did she ever mention any special place, any property, any friend or relative she might be hiding with? I closed my eyes. I thought about all the conversations I'd had with Sloan during the 3 years she was married to Marcus. They were few and superficial. She never talked about her family. She never mentioned her past. It was as if she had sprung from nowhere the day she met Marcus. She has an aunt, I suddenly said, up north, near the border. Marcus mentioned it once. He said Sloan grew up with her in a place called Tucson. Ava quickly wrote it down. Name? I don't know. Marcus never said. It's a start, Ava said. We'll investigate. Everyone left except Diane. She stayed with me in that cold, empty conference room. Do you want to see your grandson? She asked. I nodded, unable to speak. She led me through security doors to the NICU. She made me wash my hands, put on a sterile gown, then she guided me to an incubator in the corner. And there he was, my grandson, Marcus's son, so small, so fragile, connected to tubes and wires, but alive, breathing, fighting. He had Marcus's dark hair, Marcus's nose, Marcus's long fingers. Can I touch him? I whispered. Yes, just be gentle. I extended my hand through the opening in the incubator. I touched his tiny hand. It was so soft, so warm. His small fingers closed around my index finger. A reflex, but it felt like a promise. Hello, little one, I whispered. I'm your grandma, and I promise I'm going to protect you. No one will ever hurt you again. I swear it on your father's memory." Diane put her hand on my shoulder. "He needs a name," she said softly, "for the hospital records, until we find the mother or until a judge decides on a name." Marcus had wanted to name his first son Elijah, after my father. He told me once during a Christmas dinner, "If I have a son, I'll call him Elijah." "Elijah," I said. "His name is Elijah." I stayed there all night, sitting next to the incubator, holding his hand, singing him the songs I used to sing to Marcus, promising him a future I didn't know if I could give him, but promising it anyway. Because now I knew the truth. This baby was not a stranger I had found by chance. He was my blood, my family, all that was left of my murdered son. And I wasn't going to let anyone take him away from me. Not the system, not Sloan, nobody. The following days were a bureaucratic nightmare. I woke up every morning at 5. I showered, dressed, and drove to the hospital. I spent the day next to Elijah's incubator, and in the afternoon, the visits began. Lawyers, social workers, police, all with folders, all with questions, all deciding if I was good enough to raise my own grandson. Marcy showed up on the third day with a list of requirements. She read it in a monotonous voice, as if reciting an appliance manual. "You will need a criminal background check, a complete psychological evaluation, a medical exam, income verification, a home inspection, personal references from at least 3 non-family members, and you have to complete a 40-hour childcare course." 40 hours. As if I hadn't raised a child to adulthood. As if I didn't know how to change a diaper or mix formula. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and took the paper she handed me. "How long will all this take?" I asked. "If you're lucky, 6 weeks. If not, 3 months." 3 months. Elijah would be in foster care for 3 months while I jumped through bureaucratic hoops to prove I deserved to raise him. And what about him in the meantime? When he's released from the hospital, he will go to a certified temporary family. He will receive proper care. You will be allowed to visit him twice a week under supervision. Twice a week under supervision? As if I were a threat? As if I wasn't the person who saved him from drowning? That night, I called Reverend Thomas. I needed references. I needed people to say I wasn't crazy, that I was capable, that I could do this. He came to my house the next day. He sat in my kitchen, drinking the same tea I used to make for Marcus when he was a child. "Of course I'll help you," he said. "You're one of the strongest women I know. This child is lucky to have you." But I didn't feel strong. I felt old, tired, scared. I was 63 years old. How was I going to chase a 2-year-old when I was 65? How was I going to help him with homework when I was 70? How would I be at his graduation if I made it to 80? "I'm too old for this," I said out loud for the first time. Reverend Thomas looked at me over his cup. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to Isaac. Age is just a number when there's love involved. I wanted to believe him. I really did. On the 4th day, Diane taught me how to care for Elijah, how to support his tiny head, how to change his miniature diapers, how to prepare the formula to the exact temperature. My hands trembled at first. I had forgotten how fragile newborns are, how dependent, how terrifyingly delicate. "You're doing great," Diane said every time I panicked. But it didn't feel great. It felt like walking on thin ice. One false move, and everything would crash down. On the 5th day, Ava returned with news. "We found Sloane's aunt," she said. "She lives in a small town 60 miles from the border, near Tucson. We went to interview her, and she says she hasn't seen Sloane in 2 years. She says they had a fight. Sloane owed her money. $3,000. Money. It always came back to money with Sloane. Marcus earned a good salary as an engineer, $7,000 a month. He had savings. He had a $200,000 life insurance policy. Sloane was the beneficiary." "Did she receive the insurance?" I asked. Ava nodded. $200,000 deposited into her account. 2 weeks later, she transferred everything to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. We're trying to trace it, but it's complicated. $200,000, the value of my son's life. And she had hidden it in some tax haven while planning to kill his baby? Why? I asked, the question that tormented me every night. Why kill the baby? She could have given him up for adoption. She could have left him at a hospital. Why try to drown him? Ava was silent for a long moment. She finally said, "We were looking into Marcus's finances. We found something interesting. 2 weeks before he died, he changed his will. He left everything to his future children. Not to Sloan, to his children." The air left my lungs. Marcus knew. Somehow he knew Sloan was pregnant, and he changed his will to protect his son. "She killed him for money," I whispered. "We believe so. And then she discovered the money would go to the baby if he was born alive, so she decided to eliminate him too." The pure malice of it left me speechless. She had killed my son, she had carried the pregnancy to term, she had given birth alone, and then she had tried to drown her own baby. All for money. Do you have enough to arrest her? When we find her, yes, but she's still missing. She's smart. She knows we're looking for her. Days turned into weeks. Elijah grew stronger. The doctors removed the tubes one by one. He started breathing on his own, feeding on his own, crying with strong, healthy lungs. It was a medical miracle. According to the doctors, no baby who had gone through what he had should be progressing so well. But I knew it was more than medicine. It was willpower. It was Marcus's spirit living in that tiny body, fighting, surviving, refusing to give up. I completed all the requirements. The background check came back clean. The medical exam showed I was healthy for my age. The psychological evaluation was the hardest. A young woman with glasses asked me questions for 3 hours. How did you cope with your son's death? How do you feel about Sloan? Are you trying to replace Marcus with this baby? That last question stung. I'm not replacing anyone, I said. I'm saving my grandson. It's different. She wrote something down. I didn't know if it was good or bad. The home inspection was humiliating. 2 women checked every corner. They opened closets, checked the refrigerator, measured the windows to see if they were secure. They counted the smoke detectors. They asked about my emergency fire plan. You'll need a certified crib, a changing table, safety gates on all stairways, cabinet locks, outlet covers. I spent $800 I didn't have on baby stuff. My pension barely covered my basic expenses. I had to use my savings, but I didn't care. Elijah was worth it. The childcare course was the worst. 15 young mothers and me. They all looked at me as if I were the confused grandmother who had wandered into the wrong class. The instructor was 25. She explained things I already knew with insulting slowness. Babies need to eat every 3 hours. Babies cry when they're hungry or wet. Never shake a baby. I nodded and took notes. Even though I wanted to scream that I had raised a child to adulthood, that I knew exactly what I was doing, but I needed that certificate. So I swallowed my pride and pretended to learn. 6 weeks after finding Elijah in the lake, Marcy showed up at the hospital with a small smile. "You've completed all the requirements," she said. "The judge will review your case next week. If all goes well, you could have temporary custody in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. After 42 days of bureaucratic hell, I could finally take my grandson home. But that same night, when everything seemed to be improving, my phone rang. It was Ava. Her voice was tense. "Ellie, I need you to come to the precinct now. We found something about Marcus you need to see." I arrived at the precinct with a knot in my stomach. Ava was waiting for me at the entrance. Her face was more serious than usual. She led me down narrow hallways to an interrogation room. On the table was a cardboard box. Inside, I recognized Marcus's belongings, his wallet, his watch, his broken phone, the things they gave me back after the accident. "What is this?" I asked. "We finally managed to unlock his phone," Ava said. "Our technician worked on it for weeks, and we found something." She took out a manila envelope, opened it, and spread several printed sheets on the table. They were screenshots of text messages between Marcus and Sloan, dated 2 weeks before his death. I read the first one. It was from Marcus to Sloan. "We need to talk. Found out about the baby." Sloan's response: "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus again: "I found the pregnancy test in the bathroom. Why didn't you tell me?" A 3-hour silence. Then Sloan: "I wasn't ready to tell you. I was scared." "Scared of what? I'm your husband. We're going to be parents. This is wonderful." Another silence. Then, "I don't want to have it. I want to travel, live, not be tied down to a baby." The messages became more intense, Marcus pleading, Sloan resisting, until I reached the last exchange, the day before the accident. Sloan: "I spoke with a lawyer. If you decide not to have the baby, I'm divorcing you. And if you have it and don't want to raise it, I'll fight for full custody. I'm not going to let you hurt my son." Marcus: "You're going to regret this, Sloan." "Is that a threat?" There was no reply. The next day, Marcus was dead. I let the papers fall. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. "She killed him," I said. "She killed him because he was going to protect the baby." "That's what we believe," Ava said. "And there's more. We checked Sloane's phone records from that week. She made 3 calls to an independent mechanic, Calvin Jones. We brought him in for questioning. And what did he say? Nothing at first. But when we showed him evidence of the bank transfer Sloan made to him, $2,000 the day before the accident, he started talking. He admitted she paid him to sabotage Marcus's car brakes." I felt sick. I had to sit down. Sloan had planned everything. She had hired someone to kill my son and made it look like an accident. Why would Calvin do something like that? Debts. He gambled. He owed $15,000 to dangerous people. Sloan offered him $2,000 right away and $3,000 more later. He took it. He's arrested now as an accomplice to murder. And Sloan? We have a warrant for her arrest for first-degree murder and attempted homicide, but we still haven't found her. She's like a ghost. I wasn't so sure. Sloan had proven to be smarter and colder than I ever imagined. If she had planned Marcus's murder in such detail, she probably had an equally elaborate escape plan. I went back to the hospital that night. I sat beside Elijah's incubator. I watched him sleep, so innocent, so oblivious to the horror surrounding him. His very existence had cost his father his life. His mother had tried to kill him, and I was all that stood between him and a system that would see him as just another file. "Your daddy loved you," I whispered to him. "He died protecting you. I'm going to finish what he started. I promise." Diane showed up an hour later. She brought flowers and a tired smile. "How do you feel?" "Like someone who's been shot," I said, "but alive." "What happened to Sloan?" "Arrested." Charged with first-degree murder for Marcus, attempted homicide for Elijah, attempted homicide for you, plus a laundry list of other crimes: conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice. She's going to spend the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. The words were sweet as honey. Justice. Finally. The recording worked perfectly. She confessed everything. Her lawyer tried to plead coercion, that you forced her to say those things. But the jury saw the whole video. They saw her pull the gun, shoot. They had no mercy. 30 minutes of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. In the following months, I recovered slowly. Physical therapy for my shoulder was painful but necessary. Diane kept coming to help with Elijah when I couldn't lift him with my injured arm. Reverend Thomas brought food. Neighbors I barely knew showed up with casseroles and kind words. "You're a hero," said the lady from the house down the street. "What you did for that baby, risking your life like that." But I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like a grandmother, doing what any grandmother would do, protecting her own. The true hero of this story is Marcus, who saw through Sloane's charm, who changed his will to protect his unborn son, who was willing to face a custody battle to keep him safe. Marcus, who paid the ultimate price for his love. And the true miracle is Elijah, who survived against all odds, who fought for every breath in those critical first hours, who brought the light back to this house that was once dark with grief. As for me, I'm just the bridge between father and son, the guardian of their memories, the protector of their future. And it is enough. It is more than enough. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.